What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today I am excited to have author LL MacRae, aka Lauren McNeil, joining me today. Lauren, how are you doing today?
I am doing really well. We are currently experiencing a heat wave in the UK right now. So I'm in one of the rooms of my house that is not air conditioned, so I'm feeling quite warm. But other than the heat, yeah, I'm feeling really good. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you again for the opportunity, David. It's really, really exciting.
Absolutely, I'm glad you're here. And yeah, I keep hearing all the horror stories about how hot it is over there, and it kind of started. I feel like it started like up north here in the U.S. because I was talking to like Brian Sabley, and I've been seeing Ben Galley make updates just about how insanely hot it is, like north of New York. Because Brian's, I believe, up in Vermont, and then Galley's up in Canada, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it's just so hot." And I go, it's been like mid 80s. I mean, it's been humid here, but like
Yeah.
it's been like mid 80s where usually it's like high 90s at this time of year in Alabama, and it's just rained every day. I feel like we've swapped spots with the UK.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here, okay, overall, it's less hot here than you. So I could say a temperature and you'd be like, what are you talking about? That's not hot at all. But for us, it really is. So it's about 30 degrees, which is about 86, 87 in Fahrenheit, which is a lot hotter than it usually is for this time.
Yeah.
And because this is a cold country, all of our houses are built to keep in the heat. So quite often it's hotter inside the house than it is outside, and you just can't get away from it. And like I said, we bought an AC unit because sleeping was just impossible, but most houses don't have AC, don't have fans, like ceiling fans or anything. So every time it just rises a little bit here, we all die and we all complain about it. So the world knows when it's hot in the UK. We're just complainers.
Yeah, I feel like the Birminghams have switched.
100%, 100%. The one here is usually miserable weather-wise.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating because I've never traveled to the UK. My wife's traveled to Spain, and she was the first to tell me there's no air conditioning and so forth there. And I just go, gosh, I don't know if I could like live without AC, but it's what they call the first world problems. But like, I love air conditioning, and I hate feeling sweaty, and so
Yeah.
I would have to move. I couldn't live there anymore.
Yeah. You'd think by now most Brits would have, seen the light and bought AC or had it installed. I think we're very stubborn. I think we like to complain a lot. So, and we always say, oh, it's only really hot for 1 or 2 weeks of the year, you can cope. And for the 1 or 2 weeks of the year, everyone just moans about it. We all, die, and, we have heat stroke and everything. And it's, we really, really do struggle. And I think it's just out of stubbornness. I think
Yeah.
most people probably could get AC, even just like a mobile unit. I'm not talking about fitting it, just something you wheel out from under the stairs for those 2 weeks and then you put back. But we won't. Yeah, I mean, we're like that in the winter as well. Like, so many people will refuse to put the heating on until it's November, even if it's freezing cold. They'll just refuse outright. So I think we're too stubborn for our own good. It's really bad.
Yeah. See, I mean, and I hate winter, but I loathe summer. And our fall here is usually like maybe a week or two, because you go from like super high 90s to like 30 in the matter of like a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But you guys have been experiencing heat for like a couple of months now, right?
Yeah, it's been on and off a couple months. The last 2 weeks in particular have been really bad. But what we normally get is a week or two of quite high temperature, and then a week of rain and thunderstorms, and it kind of clears the air, and then it'll get hot again. I would say this feels like properly summer now, in the 30s. It's very, very hot. We're supposed to have thunderstorms this weekend, and then temperatures will cool down for a bit, and then we'll probably have another spike in August. Just the way it is these days.
Y'all are more than welcome to take some of our rain. We've had like 3 weeks straight of rain.
Please send it over, and we can start thinking about that instead.
I'll just start yelling at the clouds outside. Because like literally, it's like, I would say it's like killing our summer, because the past probably 2 or 3 weeks, like we just can't go outside, because the normal times when our daughter's awake to like go take a walk or something, it's just freaking raining. And I'm like, as much as she would love to like go outside and jump in the puddle,
Yeah.
But there's also lightning, so you really can't. So it's just all right. Let's talk about something happy.
Yeah.
So, just want to start off like I always do. Tell me a little about yourself. Growing up, how you got, did you read a lot growing up? Who did you read, and then kind of how you got into writing?
Okay. So I kind of have a slightly, I don't know if I want to say unusual childhood for an author, because most authors will say, oh yeah, I started reading Narnia, or I started reading these well-known like children's authors. I liked to read a lot as a kid. I was always, I always had my nose in a book, but I genuinely don't recall reading any fantasy really growing up. Like I loved Beatrix Potter, which is, very English countryside with the Peter Rabbit and so on. I really liked that. That was probably my very first experience with anything that was like fantastical and wondrous. And I remember really enjoying that, and then suddenly wanting to read more of that. And a lot of the classic children's books that we were given, I hated, because where are the talking animals? Where is the magic? Where is the adventure? Like so many children's books I really hated. So I thought I didn't really like reading, because there were a couple of books that I enjoyed, and then I didn't really fall into it for a really, really, really long time. Like my major, I don't know, inspiration, influence, love of fantasy growing up were the Final Fantasy video games. They introduced me to an epic narrative. They introduced me to a cast of characters that were all different and all had backstories and all had, individual personalities and things like that. And that was really my hook into, this is something that I'm going to become really passionate about and really enjoy. So I grew up an only child. I was alone a lot. Both my parents were away a lot or worked a lot. So I tended to play video games. I tended to doodle a lot. I tended to like create my own characters. So I've kind of been telling stories in art form, or, just writing in, you find books that your children have written in terrible handwriting about the most ridiculous of things. But I was one of those, and I always wanted to be able to, turn these little scraps of paper that I would staple together into an actual book. So I think I always had the passion, and I think if I'd maybe had access to some more like fantasy books as a kid, I probably would have started writing a lot earlier than I did. But yeah, I always loved, the escapism of it. I loved the magical worlds. I loved how you can be anything in fantasy. You can have a giant sword, you can cast magic, there can be dragons, there can be this whole other world with floating cities in the sky. That was, eyes lighting up as a child. That was me. So I ended up in copywriting professionally. I kind of had various office-based jobs and kind of always pushed myself towards doing more writing. I could spell, which definitely put me at an advantage. And then I kind of fell into marketing, marketing communications, writing newsletters, writing websites, liaising with people from all around the world in the roles that I was in. And then I've been a copywriter since 2015. So all I did was write, and I got paid to write, and it paid the bills, and that was brilliant. And then I started writing my fiction, I would say on the side, because writing about dragons is more fun than writing about pharmaceuticals and technology and all that grown-up stuff that people actually need and pay money for. So yeah, I always had the bug, I think. Like some people have a bug to work on cars or do sports or run marathons, or, I always had the bug of, I need to jot this idea down, or I've overheard a bit of a conversation, and that's just sparked an idea. And, that was always me. I could be driving along and I'll see like a number plate on a car, and it will kind of look like a word, and I'll kind of twist it into a fantasy word. And then I'll be like, oh, what could this be? That could be the name of a place. What would a place with a name like that be like? And, just go from there. I daydream a lot. I always have. And that's kind of how I am doing what I'm doing today, because I didn't stop daydreaming.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, I always find it interesting. A lot of the authors I talk to, even the younger authors, really hark back to books and Tolkien and so forth. They don't not a lot say video games. I think Christian Cameron may be the only author that actually mentions video games like as an influence, and even still in writing today. And that's kind of what I grew up on too. When I was in elementary school, like we had to read like for grades, so I didn't really enjoy reading that much. It probably wasn't until Harry Potter started, getting popular that I really got into reading because I was like, these are worth a lot of. Like we had accelerated reading, so the like certain size books were worth more. So Harry Potter was like the highest rated of all of them. So I would read them and then go see the movies and blah blah blah. But I never really got the reading bug until high school, and I only had that for about a year, and then went up to college and did not read a book for 4 years, and then got out of college, and I was like, gosh, I need something to do like when I'm not out and about. So I started picking up reading again, and then it's just really been, it's still getting more and more ridiculous as far as books go. But yeah, video games were like always a thing. My dad actually introduced me to video games because he played Zelda on the Super Nintendo, and that got me into playing Mario Kart. And I literally just like every time a new system would come out, I'd ask for it for Christmas and play new stuff. So, but my ones, I played a lot of Halo and a lot of Call of Duty and stuff. So I didn't play a whole lot of fantasy stuff. But now it's like, which I was posted on Twitter. Jenny Dewis got me into playing Diablo 3, and so I got it on the Switch, and I've just spent like just day after day, just like getting after it. And gosh, I'm such a nerd. But yeah, but it's the story in it alone, and it's one of those that like you could just go and go and go and find stuff and collect and murder things, and it's just it's so great.
Very freeing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's just it's fascinating because I feel like there's so much storytelling going on in video games, and I'm surprised that more I guess writers behind those games don't publish works, or if they do, they aren't as widely known because there's so much good storytelling in a lot of these big, sprawling, epic games. Like your Skyrim, your Diablo, Warcraft, stuff like that. Which I know there's a lot of fiction about Warcraft, a little bit about Starcraft and stuff like that, but I don't feel like it's as wide of a range. So it's interesting to hear you say that Final Fantasy was kind of a big influence because who doesn't love Final Fantasy?
Yeah, massive, honestly. Like the amount of times I've been asked, oh, what was the author who inspired you, or what was the book that inspired you? And then I always feel I have to lie and say, oh, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, or oh, The Hobbit. And and it wasn't. Yes, I read them, but it didn't have that same impact on me. And I mean, maybe it's because you see the visual thing and you hear the dialogue in your head and you hear the music and everything, and it's very impactful. Certain ages, I think you're very susceptible to what your thing is going to be, like your passion and your interest. And I think I was 7 when Final Fantasy 7 came out, and then I played 7, 8, 9, 10, and I was in that impressionable age where your imagination is growing and you've got enough of a vocabulary to talk about it in great depth, and that's what really impacted me. And to my shame, I feel very, very underread as a fantasy author, or just someone who likes fantasy anyway. Like I'm reading more now than I have, I think, throughout any other period of my life. And to my great, great, great shame, I've never actually read The Lord of the Rings. I've seen the films, but I've never actually read the book
either.
Have you not? Oh, I'm not alone.
I've just read The Hobbit. I've been through it like 3 times, but I haven't actually been through the trilogy. So don't feel rained on. I actually know several people who haven't, because some of them actually find it quite boring. And but then you have this whole array of authors that are like, oh my gosh, this is my first love, and which I think I'm kind of waiting for Andy Serkis's new narration to come out, because he's doing the entire trilogy now. And I love the one that he just did for The Hobbit, which I actually tuned in when he did the readathon last year. So I may wait again, but I mean, I've got like the super nice like HarperCollins boxed edition, like I'm a fan because I really enjoyed the movies and I enjoy The Hobbit. But yeah, I can't say that I've read the whole thing.
I feel like there's a slight stigma. I don't think it's as bad now, but certainly a few years ago, I think if you hadn't read certain things, it was like, well, how can you possibly call yourself a fan of the genre?
Oh
How can
gosh,
you
no, that still goes on. That still goes on. Just go on Twitter on a random day.
Exactly.
You've got gatekeepers all over the place. If you haven't read Rothfuss, if you haven't read Abercrombie, if you haven't read Sanderson, I mean, it's always there and it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
And I just like don't tell. If somebody asks me if I read something, I go, yeah, I read that. And if they ask me more detail, I just like steer the conversation.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was
like,
I own them. Is that good enough?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, I'm trying to work my way through a lot of the things that I feel that I missed out on. You know, like I'm trying to read some of the classics like Belgariad and Wheel of Time.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'm not really clicking with a lot of the older classic fantasy. I think, you know, like you said, they're people's first loves. So I feel like, yes, they're very good, but there's also nostalgia there. So,
yeah.
I mean, with my example with Final Fantasy, a lot of people can point out all the flaws, and I'm like, yes, but it's still great. I feel like maybe it's similar, and maybe it's difficult for newer people to get into it sometimes, because they're so different to anything that comes out these days.
Yeah, we're supposed to be doing a Wheel of Time read through, I guess next month, just in anticipation of the show coming out. Because I haven't read the series, and I've got like I just bought like the anniversary edition of the first book. And I've got the prequel, and I think like I would say like the first like 6 or 7 books on audio. So like I'm interested to go through it, but like I've heard that it's like really good, and then there's like a big lull, and then when Sanderson kind of picks it back up, it kind of speeds back up a little bit. But you know, I'm just sitting there looking at, was it 14 books now, 15, and I'm just like, gosh, that's a lot. It's a lot of books. And I'm like, I have all these other ones I gotta get to.
Exactly.
Because I mean, I think all the audio, I think they're like 28 to 35 hours a piece. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do Game of Thrones because it's only 5 books so far. But God, that's a lot. But yeah, I mean, I've seen the same thing too, and I'm trying to go back and do like, I don't know, like a series that I missed out on in the past like decade or two, along with like a debut or two. Because since I started the blog, my focus has really been on debuts. And what I don't like is that I'll read a debut, and then when the sequel comes out, I don't have time for it, or like, I just can't at that moment, because I try to do I try to do just about every debut I can to kind of get it out there and get in people's faces, because hopefully they'll continue the series. Yeah. So my thing is, I've kind of like cleared out my queues of like audio and ebooks, and I go, okay, what series do I want to go back through that maybe I didn't finish to begin with, or like say like Josiah Bancroft's Books of Babel. Book 4 is coming out this fall, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back through the first 3 because I don't remember everything, and I really want to remember everything for the 4th book, because it feels like it's been so long since book 1, which it really hasn't been that long if you really think about it. And then I'll go back through series that I love, like Empires of Dust by Anna Spark. It's just like one of my favorite series ever. And then I'll probably go back through R.J. Barker's Bone Ships books, because the 3rd one just had the cover reveal. So, but yeah, I mean, the gatekeeping thing, it just needs to go away. People can like what they like, and if you haven't read Malazan, then you should just give up, I guess.
Yeah, what's the point if you haven't? Yeah. No,
so tell me a little bit about your writing process. You said that you've been doing copywriting for a while. I mean, did you take anything from that into your fiction writing, or has it always been kind of like a work in progress as to how you sit down and prepare for, I guess, a writing day or a writing hour or writing 30 minutes?
Yeah. So I am really, really lucky to do to be a full-time author now. I went.
Oh, that's awesome.
In checks notes 2019, because I know it's been a while. It feels like a really long time. I think lockdown has made things feel longer. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of crossover, because So I've done copywriting in-house for one company, and I've also done it as part of a marketing agency. So I would write copy for lots of different companies. And being able to change tone of voice and pacing and structure and audience and all of that kind of thing, I think is very useful, especially with characters, you know, because you want your characters to sound different, and, you know, they're different people, so they have different thought processes, and being able to kind of bring that to the fore, I think the copywriting has definitely helped. I mean, I don't know really what people think of my latest book because it's so new, but I've always felt historically that writing characters has been one of my weaknesses, and I definitely feel that the longer I've been copywriting, and my later books have definitely improved in that area. So hopefully it's a thing that people see, if not with this book, then certainly all future books. As far as my process, I take a lot of notes. I have the worst memory of anyone you will ever meet. I'm a goldfish. If I don't write it down, I will not remember it. There isn't a hope that I will remember it. I can even pick up any of my previous books and look at them and not have a clue what happens next. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember what happens next. So when I come to writing things, I start with notes. I start with the daydreaming. I'll have little sparks of ideas, concepts, maybe names, maybe dialogues, maybe a scene. And I'll just take notes for as long as it takes to have an idea that I can kind of pull from it. So with the Iron Crown, I think it was probably about 2 years worth of notes before I felt that I had enough substance there to pull a story from it. And then I'll kind of plot out a rough outline. Not in any great detail. It's, you know, someone wakes up here and they meet these people and this sort of thing happens. And then I'll do a chapter by chapter summary, and that's when I start actually drafting. And that can take a while. I normally allocate at least a month solidly just to getting the outlining, plotting, chapter by chapter stuff done. Because if I run out of stuff that I've plotted out, then I will run out of steam with writing. So I need to have enough kind of goals, like, you know, events happening, or, you know, just story beats to carry me through. But I don't do that in a huge amount of detail. It's more like point A to point B, and then I'll free write the getting there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the actual writing, I work in Pomodoros, which is basically writing sprints. You sprint for 25 minutes, have a 5-minute break, and I'll do 4 of those, take a longer break, and then do another 4. And that's pretty much what I do when I'm in writing mode, so to speak. I'm really lucky. I can get really high word counts out when I do that. I think possibly comes from copywriting and having to write a lot in not a lot of time. You know, deadlines are always very, very tight. You're always under a lot of pressure. So I definitely feel that I can take that element of my work into my actual now author work, I guess, because you can't edit anything. You know, you can't edit a blank page. So I try to get the bones of the idea out as quickly as possible, and then I can spend a lot more time with the refining and adding stuff and fleshing things out and foreshadowing and all of that fun stuff, which always sounds fun when you're not doing it, and then when you are doing it, it's like the worst thing ever. But that's just the procrastination, I think.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in between a plotter and a pantser, because I have to plot at least, I need some structure, but then quite often, you know, I'll have my chapter summary, but as I'm writing, it'll naturally evolve into something else, and I'm very willing to let that kind of creative spark flow when it's there. And sometimes I think the best parts of the books have come from the free writing bit, and then I'll just, you know, merge chapters or adjust chapters as needed. It's not a rigid structure, it's just a flexible guideline to keep me motivated, and keep like the thoughts coming.
I gotcha. So as far as self-publishing goes, what do you feel are like the advantages and then or disadvantages, and then what have you found has been like your biggest obstacle in self-publishing?
Biggest obstacle, definitely the stigma, I think. Anything else you can kind of get around with a course or training or perseverance. I feel that the stigma of it is still there. It's less than it was, and I've not really been doing this very long. I mean, my first book only published in 2017. So I still feel like I'm a new kid on the block, as opposed to, you know, some people that have been publishing as soon as like Amazon was a thing, really. But yeah, you meet people and you say, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm an author. Oh, you published? Yes. Oh, who with, or where can I get it? And I'm like, oh no, self-published. And then you can kind of just see, like, when you're having a conversation with someone and you can see their eyes glaze over slightly, or just a very slight twitch of the nose, and it's like they think they're being subtle, but they're really not being subtle. So that's definitely still a thing. And even just writing fantasy, people are like, oh well, it's not literary, is it? It's not worth anything, is it? It's like, okay, just because I read about dragons, it's just as entertaining as a middle-aged university professor going through some sort of crisis. People like what they like. Just be quiet and let them like things.
Right.
I just happen to like dragons. That's me, and thankfully enough other people like it that I can keep writing books about them. But yeah, I mean, you probably hear this a lot, but there's a lot of control in self-publishing. I'm really anxious. I don't like when things are out of my control. So being able to have all of the control over release dates, cover design, who I choose to edit, who I choose to send out arcs to, what price I sell it at, even, when I have a sale. And I do like a lot of Comic-Cons and conventions and things, because, fantasy, there's a huge target audience there. And I do a lot of cons, and it's really, really great to be able to just rock up there with a few cases of books and talk to people like we are now, and just have a conversation about, oh, you like this author, I like this author, we're having a chat, oh look, you might like this. It's so, like, it's almost tangible, like how close you are to the people that read your books. And they're not just customers, they're not just numbers on a spreadsheet, they are real people, and you really do develop like a rapport with them. I mean, it's probably only because I'm still very small. If you ever have like millions of followers, it's probably harder to have that kind of connection. But it's such a wonderful thing to have. And I think I would just be a bit too far removed if I was to be trad published. It's not something I ever tried to do in any capacity. I just decided, nope, self-publishing, and that's what I did. I have a marketing background. I thought, why not? And I've forgotten the rest of your question. I'm really sorry if I haven't covered anything.
No, you did.
Pros and cons and stigma, and then my brain ran with stigma, and then I was trying to remember what you said before. I'm so sorry.
You're good. No. You pretty much answered like what I thought of, and yeah, okay. I can see what you mean by traditional, because I feel like, and it's not every author, but I feel like some authors let it get to their head a little bit, and they kind of forget that the readers do like interactions with not all of them. There are tons of people out there that don't follow their favorite authors or tweet out, oh my gosh, I loved your book, blah 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 blah. They might handwrite letters if people still do that. I assume people do, if people still know how to use stamps. But I was talking to Ryan Cahill about this last week, and there's something about self-publishing and having a closer relationship with the readers that you can, I don't want to say more easily interact with authors, they have the easier interactions with authors and readers, but it just feels more genuine.
Yeah.
Because and there's, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of authors that I read that I've never had an interaction, let alone a genuine interaction with. But there are a lot of traditional authors here recently that I feel that still have that same vibe, like Peter McLean, R.J. Barker, Josiah Bancroft. Those are just a few off the top of my head that like I could easily chat with, and they're traditionally published. Now, granted, Josiah started as indie published, or self-published, and it's just weird. But I feel like there's so many more traditionally published authors, but that's not true. I feel like it's pretty even now, and clearly the content is really even now. And Zach Argyle did a post on our blog right after SPFBO 6 about how that's just really, it's just plateaued now. There's no difference. But yeah, I would almost say that I don't know. I don't know. I would almost say self is better than traditional.
Yeah, I mean,
because you have your own. Well, you have like your own deadlines.
Mm.
You have that control. The marketing part may be the iffy bit, but there are a lot of traditionally published books who don't get a lot of great marketing. But yeah, yeah, you're right. It's different. It's just a
Yeah.
different feel, a different way to go about it, a different approach.
Yeah.
But I mean, if say you were given a trad deal, would you still say self-pub, or would you, I guess, test the waters and see if the grass is greener?
Well, I think it's silly to completely shut the doors and throw away opportunity. I think it would depend on the deal. I think it would depend on the terms of the contract. I don't see myself giving up the freedom of self-publishing completely. I don't see how I could do that and be happy.
Yeah.
But considering something like a hybrid deal with maybe a completely separate series to see how it goes that way, why not?
Yeah.
But as long as I can maintain control of I mean, this is my business, really. That's the thing. It's not just turning up and writing. It's every other part of it, like you mentioned, the marketing, which can be a very steep learning curve, and it's always changing. It's working with other people. So yes, I can choose my cover designer, but I can't choose when they do their job. I can't choose when they have holidays or, feedback from, I mean, yes, you write alone, but it's still such a collaborative process anyway. But as a self-published author, you get to choose the people in that process. And I really like that element of it. So never say never, but it would really depend on the terms and conditions and all that kind of thing. But yeah, I would like to hold on to that freedom as long as I can, and it makes sense to do that, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a answer.
No, you're good. So talk a little bit about the Iron Crown, which is the Dragon Spirits book 1. What is it about? What can readers expect from the story? And then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, I have one here.
Whoop, whoop.
It is reversed though because of the camera. It's quite a chunk, which you never really realize when you're just looking at, the words on the screen. When you actually see a physical one, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is quite chunky. So this is the first book of a brand new epic fantasy series, adult fantasy, multi-POV, because a lot of people don't realize that or may be thrown by that. We have dragons, of course, it's kind of my thing. Plenty of magic, we have curses. It's basically the story of a guy that wakes up in the middle of a forest with no memory of where he is, what's going on. He doesn't really know very much other than his own name. So you have a kind of amnesia trope there to kind of kick things off. You've also got like the found family story. He very quickly ends up with a couple of characters who kind of begrudgingly take him in. And most of the book is kind of him trying to find out what's going on, what's happening. Other people like him turn up. So it's not like a chosen one in like he is the only one that's been selected for this grand purpose. It's not quite like that. He is just one of many. We just happen to follow his story. It's going to be a trilogy. There is already a novella out, a prequel novella, which is free, or you can pay for it on Amazon if you so wish, but you can also read it free. So please don't feel annoyed if you bought it on Amazon and then you realize you can get it free from me. It's not essential reading by any means. It just kind of serves as a bit of a stepping stone into the world. I spoke a bit about, that wonder of, floating cities and all that kind of thing when I was little. And I really wanted to have like a proper magic drenched world. So we've got enchanted forests, we've got rivers that sing as the water moves, we've got, magic that comes to life in the form of these dragon spirits, which the series is named for. So you've got a spirit of a place, you've got a spirit of a forest, of a sea, of a mountain. You've got the spirit of iron, which has helped a country become an empire, because why wouldn't it if you've got full control over your swords? So I really wanted to bring in like a proper epic fantasy with loads and loads of magic, instead of, magic is dying out or it's a rarity or anything like that. I really, really love properly epic magical worlds with a really eclectic cast of characters, and that's what I've tried to bring with the Iron Crown. I am a coward. I don't really like the dark stuff. I'm not a huge fan of grimdark. I'm not a huge fan of hopelessness. So I try to write light-hearted, hopeful, fun adventure stories. And that's really what the Iron Crown is, and what the series will be.
I gotcha. So you brought up there's a couple of tropes in there. How do you feel about tropes? I know there's a lot of people out there like, oh my gosh, they got the usual tropes in there. I mean, do you love writing about tropes and trying to find new ways to bring them about?
I do. And the amnesia thing really does turn a lot of people off, I learned. I mean, I originally envisaged this as a portal fantasy, which is kind of where the Fen, the name of the main character, kind of has his not knowing where he is, not knowing what's going on kind of scenario. And then I changed it to epic, and then I was like, okay, well, how can I make him have the same thing without it being a portal fantasy? And then you've got curses and things like that, which really kind of fall very naturally into the stories. It's like it was always supposed to be there. But I really like them. They're kind of popular for a reason. I will never not like reading about, I should have written down tropes that I really like, and chosen ones are fun. I like them, but I do like them to be subverted. So when I tried to do like the amnesia thing, I did try to use it not as an excuse to just info dump loads of exposition and a character telling this is exactly how the world works and the sun rises at this time and this is this country and this is the history, because that's just not fun to read. It's not fun to write. So I like finding ways to kind of naturally pepper in these sorts of details and make it come alive in a way that you don't even realize that you're being taught this kind of thing. So I really like trying to do that. I think that's probably helped a lot by copywriting, I'm not going to lie, because you need to sell to people and then not realize that they're being sold to. So it's that kind of, that sounds really manipulative, my God. It's just a way of writing stuff that's entertaining, and then someone comes away having learned something without realizing it, and hopefully in an enjoyable way. So that's what I try to do. But yeah, I tend to like tropes. I tend to not like the negative ones, the ones that are just there for the sake of being there. I like them when they have a purpose.
Yeah.
I like them when it makes sense in the situation or the plot or the world, because I think it can really add a familiar element to something that may be quite new and exciting. And it's almost like a comfort blanket.
Yeah.
So yeah, when done well, I tend to like them. I really, really do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like adding like sensory elements to a fantasy world or to a space opera. It's something that you can kind of latch on to.
Yes.
If you're feeling lost.
Absolutely, because it feels like the author is telling you, trust me, we know where we're going with this. Stick with it, and you're probably going to have a good time. So yeah, I do like them, and there are so many more than I even realized. TV tropes is a rabbit hole that I've kind of gotten lost down on more than one occasion. And you don't realize that how much of media is full of tropes, and you don't even realize it. You're just like, oh yeah, I have seen that thing 5 or 6 times, and oh yeah, that's why I like this thing, because it's an actual trope that people are aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do like them.
So what made you enter the SPFBO competition?
So I've entered once before, the 4th one, which was in 2018, with another book here that I can show you. So this is Meredith. This is the first book I wrote back in 2017, and I entered it in. I'm an SPFBO, or I'm really sorry. I'm not a SPFBO. But it did really well. It made it to the semi-finals, and I had no kind of expectations of it at all. And I was like, oh, people like it, and maybe I could do something with it. And I've wanted to enter again since, but I never had like a book that I felt that fit, had to be first in the series. I do have an urban fantasy series, but that was written more as a palate cleanser, and it's good, but I don't think it's my strongest writing. So when I entered again, I wanted it to be with something that I kind of backed 100%. And I had planned to finish the Iron Crown the first week of May, and then the announcement date went live, and I was like, oh, something's aligned for me to maybe give this another go. So I'll just pop it in and I'll just see. I mean, there've been so many fantastic indie books that have been out. You know, like I read Sword of Kaigan and I was in floods of tears at multiple points. I was like, holy moly, this is the level that we're at right now. And you know, maybe I have a chance, maybe I don't, but if a couple of people like it, I'm gonna call that a win. So yeah, literally just the dates lined up and I had a brand new book and I was all very giddy and excited, and I thought, I'll just enter it and I'll run away and not look at it again and just but no, it's fantastic. I try and keep tabs on it every year. You know, I've got a lineup of finalists and semi-finalists that I want to read. I'm slowly working my way through. The quality, like you said earlier, is on par with trad. So why wouldn't you? It's a ready-made list of very, very good books. Just go and read them. So yeah. It's something that's a fantastic competition. It does so much for the community. And it was something that I was able to be part of again. So I thought, yeah, why not? Let's give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we were talking a little off camera about, you know, kind of, because you're in our group, you're in our FFA little grouping there for 30 books. And you know, we're doing things a little differently than other blogs, and kind of want to reiterate it out there because a lot of people are like, why isn't FFA made any announcements? You know, because we originally started out with 15 and now we're down to 10 because people, I mean, we've got some ladies on here that have just found out they're pregnant, and life has gotten really busy for them, so they've taken a back seat. We've got a couple of others that just, you know, life has just gotten pretty busy, so we're down to 10 now. But you know, we're all reading every book that we've been given because we want everybody to have a fair shake, because we feel that's the only way to do this. And so we're about ready to make our first cut of 10. So which is, I feel like it's a pretty big accomplishment. I mean, I know it's been 2 months, but you know, stuff's going to move a little quicker now. You know, we're starting to get into August here pretty shortly, so that opens up me a little bit more, and I'm sure it opens up a few others that have kids. So, but you know, it's been an exciting little ride so far, and you know, expect big announcements coming soon, and you know, maybe a big announcement. Iron Crown could be in there potentially since it's in our grouping, so we'll see. But you know, we won't keep anybody on pins and needles for too much longer. But it is a very exciting competition. I was actually in it. Oh gosh, was it SPFBO 3 or 4? I can't remember. I was with Book Nest, and I was just a reviewer for it. And it was interesting that I feel like it's gotten a lot bigger now than it was even back then. Granted, you know, we've had some amazing winners, amazing past winners, and I really kept up with it this past year because we had kind of thrown our name out there to potentially be in it for 7, which we are now, which is awesome. And yeah, so it's it's a pretty good field this year. So I was kind of surprised. I knew a few that were going to be entering, and there were a few that were kind of on the fence. And Ryan Cahill was one of those that I mentioned to him. He was like, I don't know if I want to do it. And he was like, screw it, I did it. I entered it.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to look at it again. But yeah, it's you know, it's awesome that whether or not you get far, you at least have multiple eyes on your book, and there's always the potential that if you don't make the original cut, you know, there's always a way to get known, because people, you know, you can have a list of this book should have made it but didn't, kind of thing. So I'm really excited to see how you fare in it. And yeah, so we're churning and burning over here to get it done with. So
there's a Facebook group. I can't remember who posted, but there was somebody quite near the beginning, I think before even like all of the spots have been taken, said something like, don't like focus on winning or being a finalist, because, you know, it's 300 down to 1. So that it's not about that. It's more about like the network. I hate that word networking, but you know, the people that
it's such a professional term.
Honestly, I like twitch every time I see it, networking. But it's about the connections that you make. And you know, like I've spoken to so many authors already, and you know, speaking to you guys and other bloggers and booktubers and book reviewers, and it just feels like a community, and everyone is just there to help everybody else out and cheer everybody else on. And yes, technically it's competition, but it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like a place where all of the fantasy lovers of the world that are on Twitter and Facebook can kind of come to chat. And honestly, that is the best part of it, and probably the most important part of it, because I've bought other books that have been entered already. I'm starting to read like the Ringlander, for example, by Michael S. Jackson. I've got a copy in the post on its way to me right now. And just like the cover contest, for example, you just see so many things, because 300 books, it's hard to pick out a few, but then you see cover, I'm like, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? And my TBR has just grown exponentially.
And it will continue to do so.
Yeah. But it's such a positive experience. I mean, anyone who's writing, anyone who's indie published, who's probably heard about it, I would say, honestly, mark it in your calendar for next year, and just be part of it, because you're going to take something good from it.
Yeah. And I mean, take for example the panel we did at TBRCon in January. I mean, we had a bulk of the finalists. We didn't have every single one of them, but we had a bulk of them. And I mean, just like a bunch of friends sitting at a pub and having a drink and just chatting. I mean, it is not a competition in the sense of being very cutthroat. Everybody is super happy for each other, yes, especially for whoever wins. I mean, it's I mean, you're trying your book in the originally up against 30 books. And then if you make it to the finals, you're up against 9 others that are equally better, worse, whatever. But I mean, it's always depends on your reader too. Yeah. You can have an amazing book, and if you've got say one blog that they've had a horrible couple of weeks, it may not win through because there's something in that book that just struck a nerve or struck a chord. And that's books in general. There's always going to be a reader for one book that there's not going to be, the next reader won't enjoy it as much, because there's always a variable somewhere. So, but yeah, I think it's amazing competition. Mark has done a phenomenal job with it. All the bloggers that have been doing this for years, because I know there's a few of them that have been there since day one. So it's been phenomenal. So, and I hope it continues for the future. So yeah, exactly. So last question I got for you. What are some books you've read recently that you'd recommend?
Okay, so you spoke about Josiah Bancroft. I'm currently reading The Hod King on audio, very nearly said Audible, which is fantastic. Weirdly enough, Zen in a Sense was the first audiobook I ever listened to, and that was such an introduction that I've been like a member ever since of Audible. It's fantastic. The whole series is amazing. Please read it. Sword of Kaigan, I mentioned that I loved, and I also have to check my notes because I've written down a lot of other books. Funnily enough, there's quite a lot of indies here. I went on a binge and read all the Yarns World books by Benedict Patrick. Fantastic. Read them in any order you want. Just pick a cover that you like and go with it. You're going to love it. It's fantastic. Jen Williams's Copycat trilogy. I never hear anyone talk about it, but it's fantastic. It's really, really good. Adventure fantasy, lots of dragons, fantastic characters, great world building. What more do you want? I say I don't like grimdark. However, that being said, The Gutter Prayer it blew my mind. It was amazing. I could deal with all of the horrible, bad, icky stuff because the writing was just superb. I just bought the 3rd book when it came out, so I've got that to read. So The Gutter Prayer quadrilogy, definitely read that as well.
Yeah, I definitely recommend Black Iron Legacy by Hand in Hand, which is Gutter Prayer. Yeah.
I very nearly barked just then, and he was going to ruin the recording. But yeah.
I need to read some Jen Williams. I've got her The Ninth Reign, and I can't remember the actual series name, but it hasn't been released in the US, so I've been having to pull the physical books from Book Depository to get shipped over. So it's really disappointing when there's I know it happens in the UK too, but like when there's a series that you've heard so much about that doesn't get a publisher in your country, which I know that's just one of many. Like I kind of wish that Anna Stevens' Godblind trilogy had gotten a US audiobook series, because I'm pretty sure at least the first book is on audio in the UK, and I cannot get it anywhere. Oh no, but what's that?
That's ridiculous.
I know.
It's not
I mean,
fair.
just exchange the rights. Let's do it.
I know, right? How difficult is it?
Yeah, you need some great series. I definitely recommend all those as well. I need to read Sword of Kage. I've heard so many good things
Oh,
about
it's
it.
so good. Just have some tissues ready because it will kill you multiple times.
I'll make sure I'll go get a fresh box. Well, Lauren, I really appreciate you coming on and chatting today. And let's see the cover for the Iron Crown once again. So the Iron Crown is available everywhere, so make sure to go grab yourself a copy. And look forward to a potential announcement soonish in regards to it in the SPFBO 7 competition. But Lauren, just best of luck in the competition. I will say that as a, I don't know what kind of party I would say because I'm in it, but you know what I mean. But best of luck with it, and best of luck with book 2. And we will try to do this again sometime.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Absolutely.